Good evening, everyone, and thank you and welcome to Metaverse News Network, where Micah Crotchsheed and Richard Morant and myself, Shauna Lee Lang, are very humbled to be able to be here tonight. I want to start the beginning of this broadcast by saying that we are extremely cognizant of the fact that there, but for the grace of God, go we. We have electricity tonight. We're communicating across the ocean, and our hearts and minds go out to the Ukrainian people. Our broadcast tonight, Michael, you'll learn, is extremely adept and knowledgeable in SmartLedger and Smart Chain and blockchain. She's going to talk to us a little bit about that. We want to ask her a lot of questions about what does this mean in a wartime environment and in war itself. Micah is in Cologne, as I mentioned, and Richard is in Oklahoma. I'm in San Francisco tonight. How's everybody doing?
Well, um, the, I'm personally good, but I think the situation of the world is pretty concerning. So it's kind of like it seems many situations or parts of the world are on fire.
It's kind of weird, isn't it, that there's this background strangeness going on, but your daily life still continues. It's these kind of two layers to reality that all of us face every day, where it's okay, I still have to go shopping, I still have to put bread on the table, but I'm concerned and worried about people that are in a distant place that I have no actual connection to, apart from the stories that I hear. And I feel it puts me in a strange kind of almost paranoid state of, is all of this stuff going to end up affecting me?
Mm.
And I wonder how many people out there are concerned in that kind of way of, what is this actually going to mean for me in the long term?
Mm. It's funny. We were talking, and this is how small and down in the weeds we get. But we were talking today in a group setting about the cost of gas, which is so really relatively inconsequential. And I want to also just take a moment to pay homage to Restream. Restream is the broadcasting service that we have now. Richard been using. This is our 16th or 17th broadcast.
17, we're on 17 now.
17th broadcast. And the founders of Restream both are Ukrainian fellows. The company is located in Ukraine, and they had a third of their workforce, which they were able to take out of the country and rehouse elsewhere. But,
And it's still running.
still running. Thank you. Thank you, Restream. But it does speak to, what happens in this sort of international global environment where we are unconsciously and unknowingly reliant on technology that has been developed outside of the United States. And we don't even, I never even thought about where Restream came from. Did you, Richard? I never gave that a thought. And yet here we are, Micah, in an environment where, these are the very people that have their boots on the ground at the moment. Tell me a little bit about, let's start a little bit about you personally, because I think it's important before you hear about someone's perspective in the technology space to understand who they are as a person. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, your schooling, how you came to technology. Walk us through how we find you here with SmartLedger today.
Well, in my childhood, I always wanted to become a musician. So I grew up in a small town village where almost like nothing was going on. So the music was the only thing I could more or less do. Then the internet started. We had this modem with the funny sounds when you go onto the internet, and yeah, that was exciting to have then open up a new world besides this little village that I was living in, and I remember like working with cassette players, playing the bass, or then CDs came, or more the usage of CDs came more into the focus, and the internet, that was an amazing thing in my youth. And I was always interested in computers, and my grandfather was really bringing us grandchildren to use the computer. He always gave us like newspaper articles and said, write this down onto the computer. So we were typing then these things down. And mentioning my grandfather, I mean, I grew up in Germany, and Germany is kind of like well-known starting world wars. And my what do you say, grandfather? So the he was in World War One, the First World War, and I know that he, for example, lost his eye. I don't know about the other family members. And in World War II, my grandfather had to go to war, so that he didn't have any choice, let's say. So he had to go to war as a very young man, and he became a war prisoner in Russia. He survived, but for example, he was starving almost to death. And he also, because in Russia it's very cold, and he lost several of his fingers. They froze off, and toes, and horrible things that no one wants to imagine. And I know also family members from my mother's side, we were hiding Jews in the basement that they that they could survive. So I remember they were sending postcards. You know, when I was young, I sometimes saw these postcards from people expressing their gratefulness towards us, and I was like, I didn't, you know, as a child, I wasn't that consciousness about the situation. Yeah, but these, I mean. It's something it's almost like you cannot imagine this, yeah? And that these things are that there are still people in the world bringing up such situations as they are now. It's I think it's only sick minds can want to bring up such war situations. If you have a pure and pure mind, a pure heart, then this could never ever happen. And it's more than just a pity that everyone is suffering from these people. So I came from, when growing up, then I became a musician. I started after I finished school. I actually started studying psychology, because I was a bit insecure if I could live from the music, but I realized I could do it, and I started studying jazz upright bass and made a successful studies, and I toured the world. I was a very successful musician, and when I was working as a musician, I noticed, how can I do this until the end of my life? I mean, I can live from music. I succeeded. I achieved all the things that I wanted to do, actually. And can I live from, or can I do this job when I'm still like 50, 60, 70? I don't know. And I also wanted to do something which is scalable. And I didn't think like leading like a music management service would be the thing that I really want to do. So I started searching for business ideas, scalable business ideas, and the internet was the access to do these things, or the best tool. But I knew that I didn't have enough knowledge to possibly build up such a company. So besides making music, I started studying economics, and in my economic studies, I started attending startup events. And on one of these startup events, someone told me about the blockchain technology and about digital assets. And alone, the use case that you can send within a second, a fraction of a cent, for a fraction of a cent, is simply amazing. And I could immediately see how it will solve the problem of billions of people around the world. I mean, we don't have we have a bank, but people who don't have the access to a bank system, this is a huge problem for their everyday life, and this could be easily solved. They have a phone. I mean, there's already like also these mobile monies since many years, even before crypto started. Some of these, let's say, innovations that are already out there in the world, which could solve many problems around the world, are in some ways restricted. And this is what we also see in the current situation. For example, what happened with Canada.
Mm-hmm.
In the situation, okay, people are starting protesting. It is not maybe in the consent with the government. Oh, let's freeze the bank accounts, and also let's try to freeze all these crypto wallets. And also the exchanges, okay, they shall stop all the transactions which are connected with whatever. So, yeah, that's the situation.
What do you think is going to happen then with Ukraine and the Russian side, where the Russians have, I mean, some of the crypto exchanges have now refused to freeze any Russian wallets? What do you think to that, and how that's playing out now?
I think there's always a way to circumstance these restrictions. For example, there are exchanges, first of all, use a VPN, or there are exchanges that are not doing KYC, KYB processes. Mm-hmm. And there's always a way to circumstance these things. But besides this situation, I mean, there's something coming up by the FATF. They are creating like a similar system to the banking system. Mm-hmm. They are kind of like replicating what we have now in the legacy systems to the crypto world, and actually killing crypto. Under the, let's say, flag of anti-money laundering and so on, and that at the end, the crypto cannot even flow. Yeah. So let's say Malta is on a gray list, or this in this country is on a blacklist, and even if it's not used for money laundering or whatever, someone wants to build up a business because of this system that is being created, the crypto will not even stream, at least not from any exchange to exchange. So it possibly a system has to be created where it is not dependent with so-called VASPs, any exchanges. I don't know how this will play out, but this is the current situation.
Just before we carry on further, can I ask what you think about the theory of liquidity being a restriction for Russia? I mean, if we start thinking about the actual physics of how exchanges work and how the liquidity of those work to the comparison of dollar assets or fiat assets, the liquidity in the system wouldn't be large enough to handle the multi-billions of dollars that Russia would have to move around to be able to finance what they're doing with crypto. Or do you agree with that statement, or do you think that they'd be able to find the liquidity to exit their assets in crypto?
Yeah, it's always liquidity is always a problem, I guess. Also for every exchange. So, for example, there are liquidity providers. I don't know how this could be used. I mean, Russia has connections to everywhere around the world, and I think if they have money, there will be people to do things.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Just for me, as I've been looking at it, it's the only thing that I can see is when people start going, the Russians, they're just going to move into crypto and the Bitcoin price is going to go absolutely flummoxed because now all the power is coming out of Russia and all the mining that gets done in Russia. And I was like, well, that's not really the point, is it? Because the volume that's able to be moved might be able to help the local people, but I just don't see enough actual liquidity in the system for the real Russian billions that they'd need to move around to fund a war system to be done in crypto. So from my side, it kind of feels like people have got this false idea that the Russians are going to be able to save themselves if with their sanction from banking with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Bitcoin is really replacing the fiat system. It's always like pump the coin and go back to fiat. And I also think that, or I also know through analytics platform that I have access to, that the whole crypto world is manipulated. There are cycle trades, there are other things, how fake hypes are being created around certain coins. And I think the biggest scam in the world possibly is Tether, USDT. It's like fake money is being printed, and an audit would destroy their business model. It was actually it's a ticking time bomb, and it's like what there's a Twitter channel which is really helpful, I think, to understand this. It's called Bitfinex. It's like let's say a group of people, whoever that is, has access to the USDT printing machine. They hand out this fake money to their group for maybe a fraction of a cent. With this USDT, they are buying BTC and pumping BTC through it. And they have like make arrangements. At this point, we are all selling it. They're dumping it, or they're selling it for fiat. They dump the price of BTC, and then this machine starts again. They buy again, and so they are, let's say, changing their fake money for fiat.
Wow. And where are they finding the exchanges to move that level of money around? Because in order to pump in enough money to be adjusting the BTC price, that's a substantial fund. I mean, no matter what you're looking at with the price of that coin at the moment, what you're going to have to be pumping in to generate that cyclical result, that's a lot of money.
I mean, it's you always see like, oh, another billion is being printed. Yeah, oh, another billion. And then, okay. And this is all just from BTC and make the people crazy, FOMO into it, and then being dumped. And I think the real market price of BTC is much, much lower. So actually, Tether is the ticking time bomb.
That's fascinating.
Hmm.
Fascinating. So do you think that as this goes forward with these kind of ticking time bombs inside of the system, for me, I'm a lot more interested in the long-term power of smart contracts than the payment system that they're using, because the payment system for me that can be used in a fiat in a smart contract could be a Visa card that's written into a
Yeah.
smart contract. We don't necessarily have to use cryptocurrency to activate smart contracts. Is that correct?
Yes. So also, first of all, I want to say I absolutely distinguish crypto and blockchain.
Mm.
So crypto, for me, it's one thing. It's for me
It's
like a
completely separate. Yeah.
speculation thing. But what blockchain can do is
Mhm.
like a complete other world.
Completely separate. Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
Completely agree.
as separate these things. So I uh, do think, for me, like blockchain itself is a pure thing.
Mhm.
But what humans are doing with this pure thing is really diverse. And I think,
Is it possible, do you think, Mike, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. Is it possible for blockchain, let's just talk about blockchain before we go into crypto. Is it possible to have an apolitical blockchain? Given that we have all these global entities, all these global developers, uh, now a complete international network of blockchain users and thinkers, can we get to an apolitical stance with blockchain?
well, first of all, when talking about blockchain, blockchain is not equal blockchain. There are thousands of different blockchain technologies. And if we could find one blockchain technology out of all these different protocols where we all say that's the one,
Hmm.
and we fix the protocol and it is like stable, where nobody can put their finger in, let's say, and manipulate something to their favor, then I think the basis is there for creating a non-political blockchain. But it's always then what people do with it. For example, the TCP/IP, is it a protocol,
Yes.
the internet protocol?
Mhm.
Um, I think in general it's also a pure thing, but there are still like internet wars going on. So what I heard, for example, from hackers, there's like, let's say, like internet borders between Europe and America, for example. When I send like specific encrypted emails to the US, they are being collected, and maybe
Mm.
they can be opened at someday,
Mm.
by whoever agency. And I think there are always kind of like ways to separate one part of the world from each other, and it's also, I think, I also think at this moment of Ukraine, I mean, we are one world, and we are everything. Everything is connected with each other,
Mm.
and what somebody does to another, to the other, is also
To all.
affecting themselves.
Yeah.
So we are not separated. Sure, I'm as a human separated from you as a human, but still, we can affect each other.
Mhm.
I think it's like a butterfly effect or so.
Yes, which
And yeah.
I was really surprised in turning our conversation now more towards crypto. I was shocked at the rapid uh, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding support for Ukraine that developed out of the crypto community. and the donations of cryptocurrency that are now still ongoing to support the financial uh, failings of the country while they're under this war experience. How did you feel when you saw that, Richard? Were you surprised?
Not at
Did you
all.
expect it? You expected it.
I wouldn't say I expected it, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that the crypto community and the NFT community has done is it's been very vociferous in its ideas of connecting projects with NGOs and projects with things like that. There's so many NFT projects that include an element of giving to the nature of the project.
Mhm.
So I think specifically, once if we start looking at the ecosystem of the society below the actual infrastructure, the growth of giving being part of the infrastructure is one of the things that I'm most proud to be part of, and part of the early growth of it with Kulu Treks and so on, where we started the fact of giving back to the areas that you're taking stories from, and seeing the growth in that mentality in the companies that are being started in NFTs and in this space. It doesn't surprise me. It's absolutely amazing to see, and I don't think any of us expected it. But as I said, as I kind of look at it in retrospect, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, and kind of roll on to that way. And I think we're going to see more. So let me just add that on. I think we're going to see more projects coming in with connections with NGOs, and I think in the short term we're going to see a lot of connections with refugee support, not just to support what's going on in Ukraine, but we have to think of what's going to happen outside of that. I
Mm.
mean, what are the ripple effects going to be from the stone being dropped in Ukraine?
Mm.
And one of the ones that we can instantly start seeing is along the borders, and the pickups that start to happen in Poland and in Hungary, and being able to make sure that the donations get through to the NGOs that are supporting those refugee systems.
Mm.
I think that's going to be important to not just support Ukraine, but to support the infrastructure that allows for the Ukraine people to get to safe places. I think we all need to learn from what happened in the Syria side, where the knock-on effect of the refugee systems were one of the biggest stresses that happened from that conflict. And
Mhm.
I hope that this time we actually learn that we all have to be there to support not just the country and the people in the country, but the areas around it as well, and
But
those border people.
it is somewhat of a paradox, though, because while we have this humanitarian giving from cryptocurrency, we also still have this disparity uh, for those that have made their fortunes in cryptocurrency already. And Michael, last night we had our State of the Union address. I don't know if it was broadcast overseas or not, if you saw it, but I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised actually, to see that many of our top legislators came to the session in either blue and yellow colors, or had the Ukrainian flag on, or had a pin, or had a badge, or some kind of visual annotation to remind us of the times that we're in. And in as we turn to cryptocurrency and these donations, and we're in such an early spot in the overall space of how we're developing and learning about what we can actually do with this technology. Should we be using should we be using non-fiat vehicles as a vote of support? Um, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Non-fiat. I mean, whatever helps the situation. I mean, that's the thing. When they are asking crypto helps in the situation, then send crypto
Mm-hmm.
if you can. Um, but in general, I mean, besides the monetary aspect of the situation, what we also can see in this war situation is the media. That, as you mentioned, the role of the media,
Yes.
and it is very hard to distinguish what is truth and what is fake media, or what is propaganda. And I mean, already before this war started, um, we could notice, at least in the German media, I don't know if I can speak for European media in general, but always when the topic like Russia came up, it was always connected with, let's say, words that make Russia look dangerous or so. I think I know Russian people, I know Ukrainian people, and they are wonderful people. And the media, but the media is like let's say putting specific feelings to connected with they're connecting feelings with countries or painting a picture. And what we're seeing now in this, for example, on social media, then pictures are being sent, or you see like news, and in the background are like when how do you say so someone on television is talking about the current situation, but in the background are actually videos from a war like 10 years ago
Years
or
ago.
so. So and so there's kind of like misinformation in the news, and I think also in these situations, blockchain theoretically could help. For example, connected. Let's connect news with geolocations and timestamps, and let people put information into the blockchain. And let's, if they could prove they were there, let's say some newspaper says, okay, a bomb, a house exploded at that time, at this location, then there must be people around. Must have been people around, and they could maybe use their, let's say, smartphone with the geolocation and approve this message or this news, and it's being timestamped, and yeah.
So
That's what I also thought.
you would convert the same trusted environment that we use for blockchain technology over into a journalistic reportage type of environment, and so that you would have consensus on, yes, this did happen.
Yeah, and kind of like the more approval there is for certain news by, let's say, trusted people, the higher the ranking, if it's real or fake news. So there could be also like a rating system. I mean, we have AI, which can recognize a lot.
See, we were speaking with, sorry, I just want to put a pin in AI quickly, because we had an amazing AI guest a few weeks ago. And one of the products that they talk about is one called GPT-3, which is basically a text reader and understander. I mean, how far are we away in journalistic points where we're able to have a AI that's able to fact check instantly when anything is put on X platform? And none of the platforms have said, come, let's do this and have every single thing fact checked as it goes onto our platform, and at least have a warning that comes up going, this has been flagged by our fact checking. I don't see anyone doing it yet.
And I would like to see AI that helps people cash out, because this is something that we talked about with development in Africa, that if there's not the infrastructure and the technological infrastructure for physical, ATM, cash card, whatever you have, then it does no good to make these donations where people can't liquidate them immediately. And so I'd like to see blockchain, SmartLedger technology, crypto coin technology, AI technology developed to, I should just be able to demonstrate my proof of transfer, and the next minute I know I've got cash in my hand, because in a wartime situation, I'm not going to be able to rely on the banks. And so that instantaneous transfer is something I would love to see.
Absolutely. And I think mentioning AI and smart contracts, um, and maybe also recording contracts and further technologies. So blockchain, it's not blockchain alone. It's mostly the key of wonderful innovations. It's in the combination of different technologies. Also, when speaking about Web3 or Metaverse, AI, VR, XR, the key is in the combination. And then this technology can be used in almost, let's say, all sectors. For example, with SmartLedger, when you just spoke of the proof of a transfer or transaction, it's also in the supply chain management. Yeah, how do I know where my food comes from, or is this smartphone, is this the real iPhone that I have, or whatever, everything connected with a blockchain, or is the drug, the medicine that I'm using, is it the real medicine, or was the supply chain secure? If, for example, some of the medicine has to stay under a certain temperature and to still be able to work properly, and this could be connected with IoT. The IoT sensors also come into play, and
That's
So, and
fascinating. You
then
just
there's
made me
like,
think of something. I'd just like to run an idea. So all of a sudden we're thinking smart contracts, and you just described the cold chain, and the cold chain in retail, specifically like for big retail stores and so on, gets really interesting. Because if there's a disruption in the cold chain, all of a sudden you have massive amounts of food that are then unsellable, or they're unsafe if that cold chain's been broken. So the idea of some form of smart contract that is able to monitor a sensor inside some form of containment unit, that as soon as those parameters are broken, all of that food is therefore instantly said to be unsafe. That is interesting.
See, it's so funny.
and
Richard and I think
it's
so differently,
sorry.
and it's so funny because I love his idea. I love his idea, but my mind went actually somewhere else. I was thinking in terms of, okay, let's talk about the refugee situation. People leaving one country and going to another. What does that look like for paperwork? And oh my God, the stress and the trauma you have to go through. My mother's here, my father's there, my daughter's here, my sister's there. That idea of the documentation on the blockchain, that all you'd have to do is just show I'm registered, this is my number, so to speak, this is me, and it automatically transfers over with you. How amazing would that be? Go ahead,
Like
Mike. I didn't interrupt.
tokenization of identities or digital identities.
Yes, yes,
But I mean, this is also, it's a complex topic, actually, digital identities.
yes.
And I think it also contains risks. For example, in let's say you come from Ukraine and you want to, a refugee, or want to go in another country, and the country says, "Oh, Ukraine, this is blacklisted in our country," and and there might be like restrictions. So let's say everything is then digital and connected with this digital ID. Kind of like some things are already going on in China with a digital. Oh, that
No, no,
was
no.
okay.
I'm really agreeing with you, because
Yes.
I think some of what China is doing is so interesting, because we're ending up with three different kind of blockchain ecosystems. Like there's the
Right.
US, the European, and the
European and
Chinese.
China.
We've got three kind of distinct ways of thinking about it and interacting with it at the moment. And this idea of putting more of our identity online and what that would mean in the US compared to what that would mean in China. And when you think of what that would mean in China, it's scary. So if we start pushing something of what is a global blockchain idea or thesis, it's already got three completely different viewpoints of not theory, but actual practical use. Where if I was going to China, there was no ways I would want any form of digital recognition to be able to get to. So then if I've created a digital persona, and as I said, we all of us here have a solid digital presence. We all do. So what happens when that goes to China and we're then trackable and then persecutable by that tracking on an identity that's permanently tied to us?
Good point, especially in a wartime.
Yeah.
Very good point.
And then this is one of the risks, I think, that it can be like used or abused as a system for social seclusion. No, not
Exclusion.
what's the exclusion? Yeah,
Exclusion.
The opposite of inclusion. Yeah. So, but this shouldn't be like, let's say, okay, every technology has risks, and we have to become aware of these risks, and try to figure out how we still can use this technology for good, and create, let's say, rules or regulations around the world that, let's say, a secure use of this technology is being provided.
See, this is where I think, and again, when Shona and I say we differ in thinking, one of the differs is the joy that I'm male, she's female. So I think about things, she thinks about people. Let's call that fact a fact, and that's the way that is. But one of the things that concerns me about this side is it feels that the more that we put ourselves as people on the blockchain, the more the risk goes up. The more that we think of practical uses for things on blockchain, the more the kind of security that we're allowed to think of it as it's just a thing on there. It's not our own personal things that kind of get tied up into it. It kind of feels safer for me that way.
See, to me it feels scarier, and I'll tell you why. Because if we're talking about supply on the blockchain, okay, here we have a group of people that are desperately in need of supply infrastructure. Without electricity, how do you access it? How do you keep on top of it? How do you get information in? How do you get information out? Without the electric grid, blockchain, crypto, NFT, AR, VR, XR, MR, AI, IoT, gaming, digital cyber, it doesn't mean a hill of beans without the electricity.
But I mean, also blockchain and smart contracts and recording contracts can help in this thing or the system, electricity system. I mean, how's the current situation? Let's say there's how do you say these stations? Do you say power station? Not power station.
There we go, power stations.
Yes.
The power stations. Okay. So these are let's say like power stations are like centralized servers, and a hacker can get into the system, hack the system, and then the whole electricity for a city is gone for a certain amount of time. But let's say every one of us could have like solar panels or whatever it is on the roof, and I might not need, or I might need more electricity currently because I have these lamps on and stuff.
She's got the pretty lights.
Yeah, and my neighbor has some energy left over that he doesn't use currently, and through smart contracts and recording contracts, this energy is traded,
Shared.
not shared, uh,
Yes.
Traded.
let's say decentralized,
Mm.
like how do you call these decentralized exchanges,
Mm.
like also peer to peer. So can create a peer to peer energy system, microgrid system, where we are not dependent on big centralized power stations anymore.
Mm.
And I think this even lowers the risk of such described situations.
Do
Yes.
you want me to go backwards quickly? And I'd just like to go through with you because I know every time we say the word smart contract, I know
Mm.
up until a couple of weeks ago, I was still thinking of the direct consolation of a contract I sign with a lawyer that's made smart. That's kind of my original kind of thought of it. But now, after I've been in it for a while, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not actually what smart contract is. A smart contract is an automatically executable program that executes itself when the correct criteria are
Have
met.
been met. I
So
think of
is
it as
that
just
right? Have I
code.
got
It's
that?
just code.
Yeah.
It's code.
Yes. Yeah. And what is actually, let's say, missing
Mm-hmm,
in the blockchain space, also in NFT space, these
mm-hmm,
are the so-called recording contracts.
mm-hmm,
So recording contracts are providing the semantic richness of a usual contract that you know from everyday life. Everything when you go out, you are actually everything is connected with contracts, verbal
mm-hmm.
contracts. So do you want to buy this bread? Yes, I want to buy this bread. This is actually a contract, but
Yes.
not written down. So, but these recording contracts are kind of like digitalized um, contracts which are human readable and or parser readable, computer readable,
Mm-hmm,
and these contracts can be connected with smart contracts. So let's say an NFT marketplace. You have an NFT marketplace, and currently, what is missing is who the definition of who is the buyer, who is the seller, what is the jurisdiction, what can I do with these smart contracts. All these, let's say, terms and conditions
mm-hmm.
are currently missing. So, and besides, most of the NFTs are not real NFTs. It's only like, let's say, a hash on the blockchain, but the actually
Mm-hmm.
data is on a centralized server. So this is another discussion. But yeah, let's say you have this contract, and then you meet the criterias, and then it's being executed with the smart contract. So yeah, so and this is a wonderful thing, which will also make a lot of processes in the world much more efficient, effective, and also let's say more reliable. So, for example, currently, also all these ICOs. Let's say there are ICOs, and the issuers they say, "Oh, we are creating this coin for this and this purpose,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm buying in for I buy this ICO, these coins, and then the issuers are changing the terms of conditions slowly and slowly. But if it was actually made with a recording contract, which is also connected with a hash on the blockchain, then I could prove, okay, I bought this coin under these terms and
Terms.
conditions,
Mm.
and if I want now, you changed it in a way, these criteria and terms and conditions in a way which are a disadvantage for me, so I can bring you to the court, and I know the jurisdiction because I signed it.
Hmm. This would go a long way.
Digitally signed.
This would go a long way towards minimizing the volatility in the space, right? And isn't this what we really, all of us, really just want? a little bit of stability and a little less volatility, be it blockchain, crypto, NFT, or any of the other co aligned virtual and digital spaces. I'm wondering, Micah, you're our first female guest tonight, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so thankful that you could join us, and I'm so pleased that you're here with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about what two questions I have before we close. We have about 10 more minutes. Tell me what the people of Cologne, in your view, where you are, think about the growth of the metaverse, NFT, blockchain, what they think about it. And then if you would close maybe with sharing with us from your perspective what you hear on the ground for what people of Cologne would like to see happen relative to the Ukrainian situation.
Um, well, first of all, the first question about metaverse and Web3 and all these technologies that are coming up, I think even the word blockchain is almost not known in Germany. So not only Cologne, it's maybe people heard the word Bitcoin, but they don't know much about these technologies. It's still a new thing. They are slowly waking up here and there. Then a company is interested in. They heard about something which is called blockchain, and this could possibly make the company more efficient. And then they're searching for consultancy. But if you ask the normal people on the streets, what do you think about metaverse? Then they say, what's the metaverse?
Wow.
Maybe there was maybe metaverse might be the most prominent word here because of the Facebook Meta
Yeah.
announcement. But I think it's still a bit far away. I think the US is much more advanced in this field and the knowledge about around it. And so yeah, it would still take the time. So when the US, when everyone is using it over there, then Germany will start also will also start being ready for mass adoption, let's say. And when it comes to the Ukraine situation, so I'm in Cologne, and in Cologne we have the famous carnival. And it was this is now it's over, so it was Ash Wednesday, and on Monday it was I don't know how's it called. It's I know the German word. It's Rosenmontag. It's let's say the most important day in Carnival of the year. And normally there are huge parades on the streets where people are throwing candy and everyone is shouting Kamelle and Allah. Yeah, so everyone is celebrating normally, but because of COVID, since 2 years, there's nothing going on really. But this time there could have been some parades going on, but the people decided we are making a let's say a peace parade, and people went on the streets and were like wearing like Ukrainian flags and peace signs and all these things, and there was like a huge uh, support for the Ukrainian people, and let's say sending love to the people around the world who are affected by these situations.
Richard, in Norman, Oklahoma, what do the people on the street think of blockchain, crypto, and NFT?
To be honest, I don't think the majority of them know too much about it. Even Norman, which is a campus town and there's a lot of students around, they've all heard of NFTs, and then you find the odd 19-year-old who's made $100,000 or something
Already?
silly like that on it, and then there's not a lot more. And I think what's even more interesting is when I was in South Africa and I went back home to South Africa for a while, of hearing how little is known about it there as well.
Yes.
and the fact of the knowledge that we are all in early days and none of us really knows what exactly is happening and none of us can tell where this is going to go. I mean, that's one of the fun things about being in this space, isn't it? Is we all get to discover it together.
Together, right?
And it's funny how I was speaking with Nathan, our guest from last week, yesterday,
Yes.
and we were having this lovely discussion of saying like there's so many companies at the moment that are doing pretty much the same thing, and everyone's trying to find their space inside this new space. And there's so many new services that need to be provided, and there's so many new industries that are being built up inside this technology that continue to grow the opportunity for different people. And I think as that diverges and those new spaces appear, as
Mm.
people come into the space, they're going to kind of not go up, but I think there's going to be a broadening of the space of legitimacy. Because the next thing that I'm pretty sure of in this space is we all know there's going to be a collapse at some stage or another.
Mm.
There's so many bad actors in the space
Mm.
that the only way that those go out is with a big downfall, and only projects that have true validity and usefulness then stick around afterwards. That that's also scary.
And what do you think, Richard, from your day-to-day experience, the people of Norman, Oklahoma would like to see happen relative to Ukraine?
I think that they don't want to see more troops go in from the US.
Mm.
I think the US is tired of sending people somewhere else to die.
Mm.
So I think that there's a big feeling, and also I'm not the most connected person. I live in my quarantined house.
Mm.
So I would say that this is just what I would suspect, because there's been so much of that that's gone on before, and especially after what's just happened in Afghanistan and how
Mm.
bad that retreat went.
Mm.
The feeling of doing it again so quickly, there's a very big,
Mm.
not resistance, but then there's this also
Difficult.
this huge, yeah, this because there's this huge clash inside, because the people around here are general family people who love their families and want the best for their families. So they're these good homegrown people that don't want to see other people hurt,
Mm.
but they're afraid of how do we get drawn in if we send our loved ones to help. So
Well, the future. Go ahead.
no, it's just it's a very sad situation, because
Mm.
there's so much in the world that needs help and needs fixing. And if the people who've done the fixing so often in the US have had their hands slapped so many times by trying to fix and then being fixed, and then getting the bad press from it and it going wrong, why are they going to keep doing it?
Which is why I think this is such a blow in so many ways, because we have such creative and inventive minds, such as Micah, intelligent, bright people in this space, wanting to push forward, wanting to see technological advancement, wanting to make the world a better place, more connected, more streamlined, more efficient. And then to get this blow, although we here in the US aren't directly yet impacted yet, um, indirectly, I would say, currently. Certainly, our hearts and minds are directly impacted, but as far as our day to day lives, we're not directly impacted. Um, to have this blow is almost, a real step backwards, don't you think? It's almost like you make one step ahead and everybody's a go for it, and so much energy coming out of COVID, and then to like get this out of nowhere is very confusing and very disorienting. But we're so, Richard and I know Micah too, the same is true for you, that we are overall still very bullish, very positive about the possibilities of blockchain, very positive about the possibilities of crypto, very positive about the AR and VR technologies that exist in the space, and still very much want to explore that. For anyone listening tonight, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to research and look up SmartLedger, which is a very reliable business enterprise and technological enterprise. And Micah, thank you to SmartLedger for letting you appear with us tonight. And then also, I just want to say in closing that we do need to continue to support, in addition to equity overseas internationally for people in different countries. We also want to continue to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the overall space by recognizing the contributions of bright and beautiful women, particularly as this is International Women's Week. Thank you, Richard, for reminding me that March was International Women's Week or month or whatever it is. I don't know. But we do want to recognize that women are somewhat of a minority in this space and that their contributions and talents need to be showcased. And we're so thankful you could share those with us tonight. I do have a personal note I'd like to add, if you don't mind, and that is that Metaverse News Network will be making a slight shift. I will be posting about that tomorrow. We're taking. I once went to a Tony Robbins seminar that said that positive shifts are not shifts in big degrees, but are simply 2 degrees, simple small shifts. And our simple small shift from Metaverse News Network will now be known as Metaverse Watchdogs. The intent of Metaverse Watchdogs is to act as activists and advocates for transparency and information and clarity in a space that currently is very confused and muddled. So I thank you all for your support in that. I will have a full post on that tomorrow. Meike, is there anything you'd like to add before we close tonight?
Let's create something which is positive for the world. With whatever blockchain solution, bring solutions that are valuable for the society. And I think what Metaverse Watchdogs are doing
Watchdogs,
is,
yes.
it's one of the things that are bringing this to the world and sharing this knowledge, sharing this platform, sharing the vibes. And this is very important.
Thank you, Micah. And again, I have to say thank you, Shauna, for giving us this opportunity to bring all of us together. Shauna, the light that you bring for us and the questions and the thought that you put behind this is incredible. So thank you for what you do for all of
I'll
this
close
community as
with
well.
saying thank you once again to Restream, without whom we could not do this broadcast, without whom we would not have our YouTubes, without whom we could not be communicating internationally with Micah tonight, and also across our nation, me from California to Oklahoma. And our prayers and hearts are with the people of Ukraine. Our prayers and hearts are with the founders of Restream, and our prayers and hearts are with you. So please do join us next Wednesday. And until then, take good care, everyone. Stay in touch. Let us know what's happening where you are.